Hello, welcome to Podfic Galore. I'm your horrible online reader, Goldskythe. I read out loud fanfictions for you busy bees, free of charge and no strings attached. Today I will continue reading the Silmarillion fic by Aeolian Sands from Archive of Our Own called The Rescue Party, Chapter 5. I hope you can at least try to enjoy my voice, and I will try my best for you with the equipment available to me. On with the show! The Rescue Party, Chapter 5, Boat Building. Finrod, king of Nargothrond, awoke to someone gently changing the bandages on his shoulder. Never in his life had he been so wounded. The orcs that fell upon him and his small company at the fen of Serek had trapped them like a fish in a barrel. The mud of the marshes growing ever deeper and more restrictive behind him, while the hordes of Morgoth only seemed to grow before him. Waist deep in the mud, Finrod had remembered trying valiantly to fight the orcs off, but he could barely move, and the beasts seemed to delight in this, toying with him and shooting him with poison arrows as they jeered and laughed. At the time, Finrod had prayed to Orme that they kill him in the end. He had seen the scars on Madros and knew that death was better than Angband. He fought fiercely, and the corpses sank into the marsh around him, but with every second his fate seemed closer and closer at hand. But then Barahir had arrived from the north like a swift and destructive wind, flanking the orcs and pushing them off the dry ground and into the blood-filled mud. Barahir's archers shot them down as his swordsmen leapt upon the enemy ranks, until, at last, Morgoth's company was no more. And then Barahir had come to pull bleeding Finrod from the vile filth and get him back to Nargothrond alive. Finrod blinked the memory away and looked up to see his fair sister tending to him. "Artanis," he whispered, "you finally decided to leave Doriath?" Galadriel smiled a sad smile. "I will not let you leave me like Angarato and Aiganaro." Horror seeped into Finrod's heart. "So it is true. They're gone?" "Yes," she replied sadly. "They rest now in Mandas, with Aragano, Irise, and Nolofinwe." Finrod sat up a little straighter, ignoring the sharp stabs of pain the effort won him. He had not heard of Fingolfin's death. Sort of difficult to hear things when one was unconscious from the poison of orc arrows. "What? Our High King has perished as well? How?" "He went to challenge Morgoth to single combat." Finrod stared at his sister. Surely she had been too long with the Sindar and had finally lost her mind. Although if he were honest with himself, Galadriel had never been fully sane. Why? How? Did he know he stood no chance? Moringatto is a Vala! Galadriel shrugged. "We suffered a great loss. Perhaps he saw no way back from it." "We have suffered, but we're not defeated yet. Nolofinwe still had Nelio in the east, and not to mention his own son with him in the west. And you and I! We can even count Greycloak if you wish, and Círdan. And that's just among the Eldar." "Well, honestly, Findarato, the odd thing is not that Nolofinwe went to challenge Moringotto. It is that I can still feel him. It's not like our brothers. They are an empty space in my mind and Fea. Surely they rest now. But our uncle? This is not true for him." Finrod laughed. "You have grown powerful, my fair sister. Melian has taught you well. I cannot touch the minds of others besides our own family, and they call me strong in the art of Osanwe." Galadriel punched him in one of the few unbandaged areas of skin on his shoulder. "Shut up, Findarato. You are not listening." Finrod hissed and held a hand to the bruise that was now forming. "I was," he ground out, "but now I am doing so most attentively." "Good. I can still feel our uncle. Thus, He must not be in Mandos. He refused a call? Perhaps. It's the only explanation, he said matter-of-factly. Really, Galadriel was thinking too hard about all this. He loved Noah, truly, but he was a responsible adult who could very well make his own decisions about Mandos. He had other things to be concerned with. I can feel Fëanor too, Galadriel snapped, her impatience growing. Oh. Finrod did not like the implications of that. So, he refused a call as well? Honestly, I'm not surprised, he answered diplomatically. No, this is the first time I have been able to feel our bastard half-uncle. Finrado's eyes narrowed. Language, Artemis! Miriel would not take kindly to your words. Light flashed in Galadriel's eyes. He left us all to die. I know. Do you think I cared for the ice? Finrod sighed before attempting to change the subject. Are you going to Barad Aethel? If Vindicano is hiking now, it is proper to swear our loyalty to him. No, Galadriel declared, crossing her arms. I have no kingdom, and my small group of followers have mostly settled with Thingol's people. There have even been a few marriages. I see no reason why I shouldn't swear loyalty to Vindicano, who killed our kin in Alqualonde. He didn't know. He still did it, Galadriel declared. If you insist, then go. Wish our cousin luck for me. I only advise you to find some time to talk to him about my discoveries concerning his father and Fëanor. Finarfin beat back a curse when the heel chain of the harness snagged on a nearby bush, pulling the entire plant out by the roots. It bounced behind them like a tumbleweed. A strange plant Finarfin himself had never seen before, but he had actually listened to Yavanna's descriptions of the desert plants in the south of the world, unlike Fingolfin, who had been half asleep during the lesson. Nada! He yelled at his older brother as the horse whinnied in protest. We have to fix those harness chains! It is not fair to the horses! What in the iron hells? A stressed voice cursed behind them. Finarfin turned back to see that the ensnared plant was shedding dirt straight into Fingolfin's face. He was being pelted mercilessly with mud balls and small rocks. Nada! Finarfin yelled again, this time with a hint of power in his voice. There is a forest of great oaks beside us now. Surely this will suffice for whatever your plan may be. Though, truly, must we build a boat? Fëanor seemed to growl, but he pulled the galloping horse to a canter and off into the forest, Fingolfin following them. They both came to a stop beside a large tree, and Fingolfin promptly leapt off the bay draft and stalked over to Fëanor. He stood before him then, eyes scanning his elder brother up and down as if he were inspecting a piece of art. What are you? Fëanor began, but before he could finish, Fingolfin shrugged and sent a fist into his face. Fëanor's head snapped back, and he stumbled backwards into Finarfin. Both of them lost balance and fell in a heap. Ow, what was that for? Fëanor snarled, holding his bleeding nose from where he lay across his brother. Did you have to get your blood all over my clothes? Finarfin complained quietly to himself, dismay leaking into his heart as he angrily rolled Fëanor off of him. Fingolfin stood above them and dramatically held out a closed hand. For our horses, who you so mistreated, one, he emphasized number by aggressively putting a finger up. We really should have taken care of those harnesses long ago. He then looked at his hand, as if perplexed. Would you look at that? It seems as if I don't have the hundreds of additional fingers it will take to check off all the other people and animals, and Manwë knows what else you have harmed. Well, we are dealing with the harnesses now. At least I didn't give our plans away. What? How am I supposed to know that Anara would try Olsanwe? She thinks I'm dead. Well, now she doesn't. Finarfin was too exhausted to participate in this argument. Instead, he mumbled a few words of a song that he could have his own face and hair back. He then mumbled a few more to hide the bloodstains. See, Ara, you fixed your precious clothes. Glad to see someone listens to their younger brother. Occasionally. But they aren't made it at all. It's just an illusion, Finarfin mumbled, getting to his feet. And beneath a simple concealment, these are my favorite white robes with golden embroidery. Should have been wearing red, Fëanor shrugged. Not to mention the obvious, that it was Nolo's fault. And whose fault will it be when we are still arguing here and our beloved spouses arrive with the wrath of the Valaraukar? Finarfin prompted. Nolofin was still. It took a great deal of willpower for Finarfin to stop himself from walking to the nearest tree and banging his head into it. No, he began like a parent who was barely holding on to a single thread of patience. It will be because we are wasting time arguing instead of crossing the sea. A journey, by the way, that I'm having more and more doubts about every second. Fingolfin rubbed some of the mud off his face. Truce then. Having Anaire, Nerdanel, and Erwan show up here will do no good for anyone. Come now, Fëanor, tell us your master plan. I'm glad you asked, Fëanor declared in a huff. He took the great axe from the forge that he had managed to tie onto his back. First, we shall fell a sturdy tree. Then have the draft horses and drag it to the water. Finarfin prided himself on having everyone in his life figured out. He knew Findarato, for example, thrived on friendships, and had an insatiable curiosity for the world. Ardonis had an edge about her that had scared her tutors. All 4 of his children possessed ambition in spades. He knew too that Fëanor was rash and brilliant. But up until today, he had never doubted the genius of his brother, at least when it came to questions of craft and invention. Yet now he wondered if he had suffered permanent brain damage while in the East. You mean for us to take the tree across the sea? Yes, the Teler and I discussed it in the halls of Mandos, Fëanor declared, taking a mighty swing at the large tree closest to them with an axe. The wood splintered loudly on impact. Fëanor grunted and pulled back for another swing. If you cut the branches off and dig out the material in the middle, you will have a natural boat, Fëanor grunted and swung again and again. Yes, and how will we sail the tree? I was hoping we might be able to trade the horses for rope and sail. Another few swings, and on the last one, the cracking of wood split the air. Fingolfin hurried away, dragging the horses with him. The tree swayed, but didn't fall. Then why not just ask for a boat? Really, brother? Do you really think Olwe would lend me a boat? He will shoot me for sure. And your concealments weren't exactly great protection in Tyrion. Another swing of the axe, and the tree creaked loudly, the last fibers of its trunk just barely holding on. I have a boat, Finarfin said, a bit deflated, because he had tried his best with those disguises, and moreover part of him thought that perhaps if we were there, he could convince the Teleri king. But alas, Fëanor was probably right. Olwe was notoriously stubborn, and he was no friend of the Noldor. You have what? Fingolfin yelled as the great trunk splintered and the tree toppled. Well, it's more of a rowboat, for when Erwan and I visit Alcolonde. But it's better than a tree! He yelled the last bit in Fëanor's direction. Fëanor was ignoring him. The tree he had felled had been quite tall and about 3 times as wide as an average elf. The smith stalked from the cut to where the first branches began. This lower part has plenty of length to make a fine ship, Fëanor proclaimed. He began swinging the axe to cut the branchless portion of the trunk free. Seeing that the coast was clear, Fingolfin began running back. Curse your stubbornness! He shouted. While I agree that asking Olwe for a boat is a bad taste, Otto just told us that he has one. We should go. But Finarfin knew that there was little that could move Fëanor when he was caught in the grips of creative effort. The re-embodied crafter of the Silmarils themselves was going to make this tree boat of his come hell or high water, Nerdanel or Manwë. The tree split beneath his axe again, and Fëanor now had a large log about the length of one of the Teleri swan ships. Whistling in contentment, he went to take the horses from Fingolfin. Defeated, Fingolfin sat on the grass and put his head on his knees. Finarfin came to sit beside him, watching Fëanor secure the horses' harnesses to the log. "We're doomed," Fingolfin whispered after a moment. "How in Varda's starry sky are we supposed to cross the sea in a log?" Finarfin nodded sagaciously, watching as Fëanor happily dusted off his hand, then clicked his tongue to ask the horses to move. Despite their long gallop, these were great horses of Valinor, and they had no trouble pulling the log for the few meters it took to get it out of the forest, then across the road, and to the beach. Fëanor had them pull it across the sand till they were standing knee-deep in water, the log itself only a foot or so from the sea. Finarfin elbowed his brother. "I want to see how it's going to attempt to dig out the center. Are you coming?" Fingolfin looked up where Fëanor appeared to be sprinkling something white and powdery all over the log. It almost looked like he was sprinkling decorative sugar on a cake. Even his posture was reminiscent of a proud baker or chef putting final touches on a dish. He had one hand on his hip, and the other was raised entirely above his head, sprinkling with dramatic flair the mysterious powder. "What is he doing?" Fingolfin asked slowly, and Finarfin knew that the same alarm bells that were sounding in his own head were ringing in his brother's. Not good. The sense of gloom that had overcome Fingolfin on hearing of his wife's anger and the simmering fury he had felt over the horses all but evaporated. The alarming image of Fëanor smiling in contentment and dusting a log with a flour-like substance was enough to replace all other emotions with the overwhelming anxiety that something was about to go very wrong. Fëanor should never be smiling like that. Immediately, both sons of Indis were on their feet, running like the spawn of Ungoliant was chasing them out of the forest. "Fëanor, no!" they both yelled in unison, but their oldest brother only looked at them oddly. Completely unexpectedly, he actually grabbed the horses and backed away from the log. Relief flooded Fingolfin's face. The fool had actually listened. But as he and Finarfin ran across the road, Fëanor suddenly smiled widely, and the sun glinted off his white teeth. He pulled a match out of his tunic and struck it alight, throwing it in a perfect arc so that it hit right in the center of the log. The resulting explosion was an immense fireball of destruction. It was as if the molten core of the world was leaping forth from the sands, expanding outward from the log in a great cloud of furious flames. The explosion sent deadly shards of wood flying in every direction, and its shockwave seemed to shake the very foundation of the continent. Finarfin and Fingolfin were flung back to the woods, but something powerful was enveloping them, protecting them like a shield. Fingolfin saw wood splinters and debris bounce away from them, and then he fell onto the grass. He did not feel the impact. Nerdanel was astride her fast chestnut horse, her two-handed greatsword strapped to her back. Behind her rode Anaire on her lithe black stallion, two swords at her belt, and Eärwen on her grey mare, a beautiful trident set with jewels on her back. They had barely left Tirion, being slightly delayed with leaving notes for Indis and Findis for when they returned from Taniquetil, but Nerdanel had no doubt that they would catch their husbands. After all, their horses were lighter and faster than the two missing draft horses that had apparently been stolen from the stables. Why had Fëanor taken draft horses? It was an interesting bit of the puzzle. Her husband had always preferred the strong but still agile war horses. Putting the thought aside for later, Nerdanel raced onto the coastal road, taking the southern route. They had just begun the southern leg of the trip when the earth shook beneath their three horses and a great ball of fire belched into the sky. Nerdanel's stallion reared, and she calmed it with a few soft words and gentle pats, her sisters by marriage doing the same to their anxious mounts. For several moments, no one said anything, all three watching the dissipating fireball. Then Earl nodded, pointing gracefully. I believe, she spoke almost as if bored, we shall find our most beloved husbands and the fathers of our children in that general direction. Nathaniel smiled and put her hand to her chin in thought. Yes, yes, the burning sky does seem to indicate that. Anida was silent, glaring daggers at the explosion. We should say a prayer, she replied solemnly. Iluvatar, Most High, let not our husbands not be dead just yet. We wish to have words with them still. End of chapter 5. Stay tuned.